A lot of us have heard of the concept of past lives.
Mhm.
I wonder, are they actually real? How do they affect us? Are they important?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. So I'm going to answer all that stuff, and I'm going to talk about how they work, because
Oh.
I think that's going to be important for people to understand all those other things you just asked.
Yeah.
So past lives are things that fascinate people, because it's like you'll notice that, for example, some people have a fear that they can't explain. So, for example, right, like some people who have like a terrible fear of drowning, and they've never had an experience of being underwater and not being able to breathe, but they actually don't even swim because they're so afraid of drowning, for example, and there's no
Yeah.
reason for them to have that fear,
Mhm.
right? Or different things like this, where it's not just fears, but like it's often fears, because people will notice that, more than something else. But past lives can also affect like who comes into your life. And if you have this sense of recognition of somebody, you meet them and you're like, I know this person. I've never met them
Yes.
before in my life, but I know that I know this person.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a past life thing. Okay. So I think to answer your questions, I'm just going to explain how past lives work from my perspective, okay, and from what I understand now. And the thing is, as I rise in my own frequency resonance, what becomes revealed to me changes.
Mhm.
So this may change, but this is my understanding as it is currently. So a more accurate term for past lives is alternate life, okay, or alternate lifetimes, okay? All right. Why do I call it alternate life instead of past life? Because you have to understand time, and time from different perspectives. So you and I have talked a lot about time. In fact, we did a whole episode just on the 0 point of time. There is an episode called What is Time? I think it's episode 80. And there is another episode that you and I did on the new frequency resonance of time. So there's a lot of stuff around time. So in order to understand past lives, you have to understand linear time and the eternal now.
Mhm.
Okay? So everything on spirit level happens in the eternal now. Okay? Everything is happening in the present moment. Because we are human and we have brains and we're not able to process, just think of that. Everything is happening in the eternal now. Like you can't, it's like mind blowing. You can't even possibly conceive of that because there's so much. So your brain cannot process it. It doesn't have the computation ability to deal with it. So it's much slower than, for example, it's more finite than consciousness, which is infinite and can process at a greater level. So because we have minds and because we have brains, we take time and flatten it to what we call linear time, where we have the experience of, or really it's an illusion of, past, present, future. Okay, we compress it just like we would compress music into an MP3. We flatten that information into something that is less information and easier to deliver, to send to somebody else, by your phone or whatever. Okay, so it's similar with time. Okay, so you have the eternal now, which is happening like on spirit level. Everything is happening in the eternal now. Okay, that's actually what is. The linear time is just for our brains to understand and make sense of time, okay? So I'm telling you this so that people understand the overlap. Okay, so this is going to be a little out there in left field, okay, if you can go with me for a little bit. If you don't understand all this, it's okay. Just be in the resonance of what I'm saying, okay? All right. Everything happens in the eternal now. The thing that distinguishes lifetime from lifetime is not that it happened in the past. That's the way our brains think. They're actually happening at different space-time resonances. They're different in their resonance of space-time. So they're actually all happening in the eternal now.
All at once, but in different resonance.
Exactly.
Okay.
All at once, different resonances. The resonances are like little file systems, right? It's like little systems, and you have these different experiences. Now, if you imagine them as little pockets, right? Different space-time resonance having these experiences, and you as a bigger consciousness having like all of these happen at the same time. Why do you have a past life experience in this lifetime? Okay, what you call past life experience, or like a bleed through of that fear or that knowing of that person.
A bleed through, I like that. Yeah.
Okay, because what's happened in that particular space-time resonance experience, it's happening now, okay, in the eternal now, is so traumatic or so felt or so intense, or the relationship was so strong, it pushes out of that space-time resonance and affects the other ones. It just, right, the resonance is so strong, it bleeds out. It doesn't stay contained in that space-time resonance, and it starts to affect the other ones. Okay? So you're aware of it, not completely because you have a mind that thinks
it's just an essence of.
it's like an essence of, like a faint memory, or like this weird aversion to, or a like for something, or a predisposition towards something that you can't explain. Like no one else in your family is obsessed with pottery. You, however, want to like make all kinds of clay things.
Yeah.
Right? No reason for it. Zero.
Yeah.
But this often will be a past life. So in another, possibly more than one, alternate lifetime, your love for the art of pottery is very strong, and you've done it many, many times in many of these different little pockets. So it bleeds up and out through that space-time resonance and affects the others. Make sense?
Yeah, so a very strong affinity to something that seems like kind of out of the blue of maybe your lineage or something, or a strong fear, or a strong aversion. Those could all be
past lives, or even affinity for certain cultures. So for example, right?
Yeah.
You can have something where you have an affinity for a certain culture, even though you physically don't look anything like it. So
I have that.
Yeah. Which with what?
African culture.
African culture, yeah.
The drumming, the dancing, the people.
Yeah.
I can't explain it. No one in my family does.
Yep.
Must have been.
But past lifetime.
Yeah.
For Chris, my husband's white, right? And he has a strong affinity for Japanese culture. Very, very strong. And there's this form of music called, I think it's called gagaku. I don't know if that's a correct word, but it's the music that used to be played when the emperor would appear, and he literally will weep when he hears it.
He's affected by it.
He's affected by it. It's almost like he's waiting on like tenterhooks for the emperor to walk in. It's like a very revered moment.
Wow.
You know, so he has this memory of this. He's like a white dude from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
You know, like where'd that come from? You know, or for example, for me, I will have past lifetimes as Native peoples. So I'll have an affinity for that. Or even though I'm totally, obviously not white, I have past life memories of being Scottish, like in the Highlands. So I have a memory of that. See, it doesn't matter what your skin color is in this and what your experience culturally is in this lifetime. So in those pockets of life, space-time resonances, and there are often many of them, okay, where you have these affinities for different cultures. You recognize them because it's like, that's so familiar to me.
And comfortable.
And comfortable.
Yeah.
And even like, for example, the landscape of that space may be something that it like opens your heart, for example, right? So like, for example, if we're watching a movie and it happens to be, or even not even a movie, but just like video footage of you know, places like the Isle of Skye or something like this, you know, a Scottish outlying island. It will make me feel like emotional.
Wow.
Okay. And yes, I have been there once in my lifetime, but typically when you know, it's not because of that. It's not because I happened to go see it that I had this emotional response to it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's something greater.